So back in March 2020, the cruise ship RCGS Resolute sunk a Venezuelan naval vessel. The Venezuelans thought it was bringing mercenaries to overthrow the government. Hang on, what? Yeah, we need a little background here. So the RCGS Resolute was operated by One Ocean Expeditions, a Canadian cruise line that specialized in Arctic and Antarctic cruises. The Resolute was their third ship, with the first two being chartered Russian icebreakers. One of those icebreakers ran aground in the Arctic in 2018, and then both vessels were recalled by the Russian government in the spring of 2019. The Resolute was the sole vessel in operation, but by the end of the summer, it was getting held up by unpaid bills, the result of having to deal with canceled cruises from the loss of the two Russian vessels. The ship sailed from Buenos Aires on October 19th at 7:30 p.m. 2 days later, the ship would stop in Puerto Madryn for fuel and remain there for 2 days, unable to obtain sufficient fuel for the trip. With that, One Ocean Expeditions canceled the cruise, and the ship returned to Buenos Aires. It arrived the morning of the 27th, the passengers disembarked, and the ship arrested November 1st on behalf of Danish bunker traders. The RCGS Resolute remained in Buenos Aires until it sailed on March 5th, after the ship's owner, Bunny's Adventure and Cruise Shipping Company, registered in the Bahamas, stepped in to pay outstanding amounts rather than risk losing the vessel in a court-ordered sale. A source in Argentina told me that claims were settled for 2 European bunker suppliers, three agencies from Panama, Costa Rica, and Argentina, and 22 crew members' salaries. When the Resolute sailed on the 5th, it began heading north with no destination or ETA. The RCGS Resolute arrived off the north coast of Trinidad late on March 25th and stopped overnight. The next day it rendezvoused with a tanker out of Port of Spain, Trinidad, and presumably refueled. The ship then continued on its way until it suddenly began reporting that it was not under command on March 29th, about 60 nautical miles off the north coast of Venezuela. The ship slowly drifted at 1 knot until it was less than 20 nautical miles off the uninhabited island of La Tortuga at 1 p.m. Not under command is a navigational status indicating that a ship is unable to maneuver in the water, and all vessels must keep clear. This is typically used when a ship is suffering a mechanical breakdown and is unable to move on its own. After several hours of drifting, the ship began steaming to the west and giving Wilmstead, Curacao as its destination. Then, just after midnight on the 30th, the RCGS Resolute collided with and sunk the Venezuelan Coast Guard offshore patrol vessel Naiguata. Resolute continued to Curacao and was visibly damaged on arrival. After the incident, the Venezuelan government issued a number of statements indicating that Resolute was in Venezuelan waters and was being ordered to enter port for inspection, as they suspected the ship was transporting mercenaries to attack military bases in Venezuela, unloading the mercenaries out there on the high sea. They also accused the Resolute of ramming the Naiguata and sinking it. After the incident, the ship's managers also released a statement indicating that the Resolute was in international waters at the time, and that the Venezuelan Navy began shooting at them and attempting to ram the Resolute to force it to turn towards Venezuelan waters. In doing so, the Naiguata struck the Resolute's ice-strengthened bulbous bow and began taking on water. Yeah. Oops. Given the Resolute is flagged in Portugal, and Portugal and Venezuela were in a bit of a diplomatic spit at the time, centered around President Maduro's claim that Juan Gallardo, who many saw as the legitimate president of Venezuela, imported explosives via TAP, the Portuguese national airline, and Portugal also recognizes Juan Gallardo as the legitimate leader of the country. So it seemed probable that this was just an escalation tactic that went badly for Venezuela. The Venezuelans even held a press conference to press their claims, including radio traffic from the incident. It's in Spanish, but I'll link to it below. So, if the sinking of the Naiguata wasn't crazy enough, it turns out that the Venezuelans were right to be concerned about mercenaries. Yeah, that. So Bellingcat a few days later reported that a Canadian-born ex-U.S. Army Green Beret medic named Jordan Goudreau launched a mercenary invasion into Venezuela on sea May 4th and 5th with the idea of overthrowing the Maduro government. 2 boats were intercepted, 8 were killed, and 2 captured on May 3rd, and another 8, including 2 U.S. citizens, were captured on the 4th. Oh, yeah, and Goudreau was tweeting about the raid as it happened. But if live tweeting of a mercenary invasion wasn't stupid enough, the Associated Press reported May 1 that the original plan was for a force of 300 trained by Silver Corp in Colombia to attack. Yeah, so much for OPSEC. Silver Corp became involved when they were hired to provide security, a pro-opposition concert on the Colombian border, organized by Richard Branson. That got Goudreau introduced to some of Juan Gallardo's people, and one of those people introduced Goudreau to Silver Alcia. Alcia was a retired major general in the Venezuelan army and a ringleader of a group of deserters who were already in training camps in Colombia. Planning for the attack began in April of 2019 at the Marriott in Bogota, which is where Goudreau met the group and pitched Silver Corp to train them, with an estimated cost of $1.5 million. Trying to raise a small army of mercenaries is no small task, and no government was willing to bankroll them, so funding was tight, and the men in the camps were poorly equipped, poorly supplied, and poorly fed. It all fell apart in March when one of the men was arrested crossing the border, and Colombian police stopped a truck loaded with weapons. There's evidence the Maduro government knew something was afoot as early as March 24th. So along comes the RCGS Resolute, a ship flagged in Portugal, a country that supports the opposition leader Juan Gallardo, and it begins acting a bit weirdly off the coast. It happens to have an upper deck loaded with black rigid hull inflatables, sufficient to land about 300 people. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan Navy is working on the assumption that there's a mercenary attack coming in the near future with the goal of toppling the government. The failed plot and plans revealed in the May 1st Associated Press piece certainly suggest that the Venezuelan Navy had reason to be suspicious of the Resolute, and the government's claims that they defended against a mercenary raid actually seem plausible. Yeah. That's the story of when a cruise ship sunk a naval vessel. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching.